Hey guys, so yesterday I started to send invitations to people affiliated with cryptocurrencies who are in Amsterdam. If you type in crypto in LinkedIn and you would select Amsterdam, you're going to get over 600 leads. And around half of these leads are actually good quality leads. So I sent out 300 invitations between today and yesterday to people on LinkedIn to connect with me so they could try the app and give some feedback. So I want to share the feedback with you guys. But to be able to share good feedback with you, you need to have some context. And what I did is I created one video here where I'm going to walk you through feedback from one guy called Robert. And the reason I chose Robert is because he covered a broad set of feedback that I get. All the feedback you see by Robert, you're going to see it by other people as well. But he covers most of them. So I use his example. I'm going to walk you through the questions he asked me, the answers that I give, so that you could understand for yourself exactly where we are as a startup, what our strategy is, and why we're doing certain things now, why we're doing certain things later, etc., etc. All right. A very important thing to take into consideration, because I'm not going to babysit you guys and pat you on your head and say, well, don't worry about that feedback, it's going to be okay. I'm not going to do that. Instead, what I would suggest is that if you read someone's feedback, that you take a look at their profile on LinkedIn so that you could see who the feedback is coming from, because without that context, you don't know if you should follow this feedback or not. Okay, so always pay attention to the context of the feedback. There's one more thing you have to pay attention to it in terms of feedback, and that is the fact that we're creating an app, right? That's going to have tools and reports. Okay, the tools is something you could use more often, but the value of the tools is less. The reports is something you could use once a month, but the value of the reports are the highest. People are only going to pay for our app if we're going to have reports in the app, because that is really concentrated value. So what I'm doing right now on LinkedIn is I'm telling people that I'm building this app and it's going to help people become more responsible investors. However, they're going to look at the app as it is right now and see, hey, dude, like these simple tools, I don't see how this could help someone become a more responsible investor. And then I have to explain them, this is just a framework. We're going to be adding reports in the future. And what you'll notice is that this takes me a lot of time. It's going to be long conversations. And then eventually they will get it. Okay, so the reports are coming. Right now we just have the tools. But that takes a lot of time to get there. So one of the things that me and Jared discussed is to make this process a little bit more fluid. We're going to add reports to the app that are under construction. So when someone clicks, they'll see that reports are being created in certain pages of the app. And what that does is it gives them the correct view of the app, because then they'll see, there's some tools where I could check the prices, I could do some comparison, I could use a calculator. And on the other hand, there are reports about these different topics. This seems like a very useful workplace that I would be interested to use in when it's done, specifically for the reports or specifically for the tools. But right now we don't have that. So you're going to notice that it takes a bit of energy for me to communicate the plan to users on LinkedIn. And Robert is a beautiful example. So I'm going to wrap this up by just walking you through the responses that I got from Robert earlier today. Obviously, you could also see that I'm a bit behind because these are all messages that I didn't even have time to reply to as yet. But these are all feedback that I got earlier. This girl gives some very hardcore, she's really into interactive design. So I'm going to send this one to you guys later on. So let's go to Robert, our test case for the day. And Robert told me this morning, this. When moving the screen, it lags. So you will see this by most iPhone users, right? I also experience it. This is why we want to move from the browser, the Safari browser, the IE browser, to Ionic. So while we're developing our app now, in parallel, we're also outsourcing the development in the Ionic framework. So you don't have to freak out and start crying when you see, oh, it's a bit laggy. We're aware of that. We're working on it. But it's just good to have a confirmation to know that, hey, we're not ready for the big stage as yet, because a lot of people are on iOS are experiencing it as a bit laggy. If I have the app opened, I still see upper information bar. Once again, a lot of iOS people, when I say a lot, relatively a lot, because today I already got 3, yesterday I got 1, and the guys are even sending screenshots of it, which is nice that they take the time to do this for us, because not everyone would do it. So this guy Robert didn't send me this, but I got the same feedback from another guy, and here you see the issue at the top. And in this other image, you see that they were using the simulator, and when they came back here, you know, this stuff that they should not be seeing. So boom, Robert just mentioned that straight off the top. So we know, hey, this is an issue. We're not ready for the big time, as I said, because, you know, people get a bit eked out when they have these little, you know, little nudges that is not working flawlessly as yet. And then he said, after clicking the module, it's almost impossible to go back. By far, this is the biggest issue that people are mentioning right now. That is the fact that they don't know how to navigate between the different modules. And the reason is because I was smart enough to come up with a menu that is hidden within a menu that looks like a plus button, which most people associate with something else, etc., etc., etc. So we screwed up there, and Joey is working as soon as possible to replace the position of that button. So it's very easy for people to know how to get back to the main menu. But as of right now, it's an issue, and people give the feedback on it. And the last thing was, don't see the added value compared with existing competition. And to follow up on that, he even said, I already deleted the app. If it was useful, I had definitely kept it, as I'm a full-time crypto trader. So what I like about this feedback is I asked for 2 things specifically. I asked for basic feedback, like, was the app easy to use? Now, the answer in this case was no. And does it add value? And the answer was no. And be brutally honest, and he did. This is perfect. As someone developing an app, asking a couple hundred people for feedback and getting the exact same type of feedback that you asked for, you can't be more happy. Brutal, so it's unfiltered. Is it easy to use, and does it add value? Just to give you some statistics, I would say between today and yesterday, from all the feedback that I got, it's a small percentage that didn't figure out how to navigate. So maybe 40%. And the most people, they figured it out, but they all agree that it could be easier. Okay, but some people really didn't figure it out. They really had to close the app and then reopen it to try to get it back on the menu page. That's really not cool. So that's the general feedback in terms of how easy it is to navigate. But people love the design. They love the look and feel. A lot of people rate the graphic design better than apps that they're currently using right now. Like, the design gets very, very high scores. If you could fix the navigation issue, I think that yeah, that we score high in terms of UX. So let's see what else Robert had to say. Don't want to be rude, just being brutally honest. Then he asked the question, where do you think your app wins in the competition? And what I do is I don't answer that question. Instead of answering that question about the competition, I bring him back to value, right? Because he mentioned here earlier, he don't see any added value. And when compared to existing competition, and then he asked something about the competition. So I focus on the value first. I said, I want to provide users with easy to understand monthly reports on key areas of the crypto market. So this is really simple. Like anyone could understand this, anyone could appreciate this. We want to provide users with easy to understand monthly reports on key areas of the crypto market. So the first bell that goes off by him is, hey, I didn't see any reports as yet. I told him no projections, no speculations. We're not in that business. We're just giving high-level facts based on previous months to help investors with their decision making. This version of the app does not have any of these reports as yet though. So I'm making the story more logical for him, because remember when I invited him to test the app, I said, hey, this is what my app is going to do. It's not doing it as yet, but this is what we're going to work on. And now I have the opportunity to explain him in more detail. So when people say, hey, I want to use the app right now, you always have to remember that there has to be some sort of a connection with them, with what we're working on, before they could come to that conclusion. Okay. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm explaining it, and I'm telling him the current framework only has a few tools. And I told him that I didn't want to wait until we were done programming the reports to get feedback on this crypto workplace. And this really puts things into perspective for them. Because basically what I'm telling him is, look, I asked you to give some feedback about a part of the app. We're working on other stuff still. There's other stuff that we're working. That's where the real value is. But we didn't want to wait too long to start asking for feedback. And everyone acknowledges that. You have to start to ask for feedback as quick as possible, as early as possible. So with this chunk of feedback, I'm kind of neutralizing his initial response, because earlier on he mentioned that it doesn't add value to him. And I'm basically saying here with this response, I totally understand. As an advanced user, the reports is where you would get more value from. A more basic, simple users would be happy to look at the price every day and do other things on the app outside of the reports. And now I turn to his question about how do we differentiate ourselves from the competition. Now, it's very simple. We see ourselves as a Swift Army knife. In other words, we're offering users multiple tools and reports in a single environment. And this allows them to have multiple views. And his response was, okay, this is about another app that he's talking about. You could pause the video and read this. His response was, why an app? Now, so I took some time and explained him, I want people to have access to information all the time. I explained him, we're not trying to create a dashboard that's going to overwhelm people with information, because we believe that people don't have, let me say it different. Everyone isn't like you, day trading, literally sitting down behind your screen for 8 hours a day, 6 to 8 hours a day, trading, following the market. Most people are busy, and crypto is something that they do on the side. So I approach this product from that viewpoint. I'm creating it as I'm creating it for the board of directors at ABN AMRO. They have no time. They have to read a report, and in 2 minutes, they have to get the essential pieces of the report. It has to be in simple, plain English so that anyone could understand it. So you don't need a desktop for that. You could have that on a mobile device. However, I understand that most people wouldn't want to put a report on a mobile device because usually when you think about reports, it's just like a bunch of data and a bunch of information. Our report is going to be 2 minutes reads, right? It's going to be a 2-minute read, each report. It's going to be about 4 sentences. If you want more information, you could click next for it to drill down and give you another set of 4 sentences. And it's going to always be compact. It's going to always be easily digestible. And we don't need a desktop for that. That's one of the things that I really wanted to make. That is app version that has reports, that's portable. You could always have it with you. So that was his question. You could read my reply down below. And I would like to highlight this feedback. Basically, he's saying, even though you want to have a bunch of tools or reports on a platform, they have to be perfect. You can't just make shitty tools or reports that is buggy, the navigation isn't clear, and think that you could get away with that. And I totally agree with that. Even it's better for us to have 3 tools than to have that's working good than to have 5 that is not working good. That is why Jared and I also decide that we're not going to create reports right now, but instead we're going to release version 2.0 of the app, where we fix and address all of these navigation issues so that it's slick, it's seamless, it's intuitive. So I totally agree with this feedback from Robert. And yeah, it's good that he actually just put it here on the screen. And then he put another piece of, these are really jewels. This is really important thing that he's dropping. Because the way he's writing this, I could already see that, hey, he wants to use this, but these are some of the concerns that he would have. What he says here that I have highlighted, I'm going to paraphrase, is he's saying you could create brilliant reports that gives me great metrics, and you could have them in your short little 2-minute read versions. Good for you, Lido. But I need to know the source that you're getting the information from to know that it's reliable. So that's why he's saying here, only to focus on the reports is not enough. The APIs from the exchanges are getting rarer and less accurate, and you need to pay attention to that aspect of your service. And this is true. It's something that me and Jared is working on also, that we could have a good source. We're using CoinMarketCap right now, but they're changing a lot of things. And we're also looking at some other alternatives outside of CoinMarketCap.com that people respect, because the source has to be a respectable source, or else no one is going to take the reports. No one is going to pay for the reports, period. So this is really good feedback from him. So just to sum it up, he tried the app, he deleted the app, but then he started to ask a set of questions. For example, how are we different from the competition? Why are we creating an app? And he started to give advice. He said, make the modules as perfect as possible. And he says, pay attention to your APIs, to your source, because if those sources aren't good, I'm going to be afraid to use it as an end user. So this is really valuable stuff that someone is just, taking his free time to provide feedback for. That tells you something about how eager people are to have an app that promises to deliver what we want to promise, which is to help people have an objective view of the market and an unbiased view, and all that in a simple to understand format. So I'm just scrolling through. You could pause and read it. He says, and now he quotes what the goal is. Remember, earlier on he said that he deleted the app. And after he said that, the first thing that I did was I responded to him with the goal. Let me scroll back up here. He said, don't want to be rude, blah, 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 blah. And I said, Robert, this is great feedback because it's honest and unfiltered. And then I mentioned the goal. That's the first thing that I did. So he copied that down here. He said, this goal about having monthly reports on key areas of the crypto market. He said, if you can achieve this, I will use it. I will use it is in full caps. That gives a little bit of emotional value as to he's not just saying it. It's like, hey, I will really use this if you could provide monthly reports on these key areas in the market. My interpretation of I will use it in caps is that I would pay for it. That's my interpretation of it. But you're going to notice that advanced people are very, very interested in getting these reports because we promise them that it's going to be unbiased. There's no opinions in it. It's literally us taking the market data and manipulating it into a certain view that we think is going to add value for them. And people like that idea a lot. Because in crypto, what you have is one person saying what he heard someone say, what he heard someone said, that he heard someone said, what he heard someone said, who looked at the numbers, right? And we want to change that. We want to have numbers available for everybody who, even though they're not able to do deep analysis themselves, we're kind of making everyone an independent investor. And of course, they could continue to listen to what people are saying in the market, but they will literally have facts as to what's happening in the market on a macro level. So people like that idea, and I can understand his excitement to want to try and use an app like that. And yeah, there really isn't any serious competition, and people have problems believing this, right? Like why not? And it's really simple. Most people who are doing something in crypto, they're trying to make a quick buck. It's not a noble thing to say, hey, I'm going to make the data transparent so everyone knows what's happening. And I'm going to just do that in a very simple format so that the average person could understand. No one sees the big money in that. It's much more money if I say, well, pay me and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen tomorrow. Or join my group to get, or download my course on crypto and how to make and how to double your income. And these flashy products is what most people are caught up in creating. And we're doing something totally different. We're actually saying, look, we're not keeping all this data to ourselves to trade, to tell you what to do. No, we're going to just put it out there in a format that you could understand. Is it easy to copy? Of course it is. So that's why we have to be really quick when we start to release these reports. Anyway, let's continue with Robert's feedback. Sorry. So you could forget about the BitMEX jokes between me and him. That's something else. Here I answer the questions. Why mobile? And what you notice is that once it becomes clear to him, he starts to buy the idea more. And all of a sudden, his investor brain starts to turn on. And I kind of push back on it. You see, you have proof of concept already, which is great to get potential investors on board. So he's assuming, good assumption, hey, for this to grow quick, you're going to need some investment, you're going to need some money. He followed it up by, can I ask you a direct question? So I already know investor direct question. I already know where this conversation could go, but I consciously steered it and kind of avoided all of that because I don't want to discuss any investor and rounds. And we're good. We have a clear plan that we have to execute on. We have a clear strategy for the long term. We have a team. we just want to build something now and get people on board. But Robert takes it a little bit further, and he dangles it out there in front of me. What are you looking for besides app performance, right? Because basically that's the first thing that I ask him, to give me some feedback about the app. But you kind of see the conversation going in a certain direction here, and I just I ignored this. I just went back to his earlier comments about a BitMEX, and I just jumped to a question that he didn't really ask. So I literally ignored the whole idea where I see the conversation going about funding, because if someone mentions to you, hey, it's good enough to get investors on board, and what are you looking at besides feedback? Yeah, that's pretty clear. So I asked him, or I told him why I started with the tools instead of with the reports. And that's something that I want you guys to understand also. There's besides building the actual features for tools or report, there's a whole infrastructure that needs to be strong. Resetting the password, browser issues, navigating within the app. Like, all these things have to work good. If we start the app and we're building the reports first, and it's taken us a couple months to get the infrastructure stable, right? Maybe to switch from browser to Ionic, to do all of this stuff. That's a lot of time that people have to look at the concept that we're working on, right? We could have had 5 of 4 reports instead of 4 modules now. They're easier to build than the modules. But that would be giving us a lot of time where we're kind of exposed. What we're doing now, all the difficult stuff we're doing first, right? It's much more difficult to build 4 different tools like what we did now than to build 4 different reports. The reports are pretty much the same concept. We just use different data each time. So we're trying to avoid being exposed for too long, right? We do the infrastructure, we have a team, we fix all the buggy stuff, we determine if we're going to use Ionic or some other framework. And once everything is clear, then we start to release the reports in a high volume because they're not that complex. And then in a short time, we went from an app that is stable with just reports to an amazing tool, or to an amazing app where you have tools and reports embedded in it. So basically what I told him is that I'm saving the best for last. And he says, this makes sense. And then he offered to help. Based on this, I could already sense that he has an idea of what we're doing, and the steps that we're taking is actually now making sense to him, right? It's becoming more logical. So he just reached out a hand to help, for us to have a cup of coffee. And he said he already had a lot of offers with people who wanted to provide super reports, but until now, no one impressed me so far. He says, when you're ready to meet up, just let me know. And then I want to round it up. So I say, sounds good. Tomorrow we have to set up the BV, so I have to review some documents right now, but we'll keep in touch. And just ended it there. So this is one example where there's a lot of feedback in different areas. And what you're going to notice is that most of the other feedback that you'll be getting from me I'll probably copy paste them into a document. They're really one-dimensional. So they'll just talk about the value, or they'll just talk about the design, or they'll just talk about which of the apps they like the most. So this was a nice example because it's very broad. Hope you guys understand the explanations to the points that I made, so that when you review other feedback, you could also put it into proper context. Speak to you soon, and thanks for watching.